This government meeting is brought to you by Eastworks and our local cable subscribers.
Forward to the clock.
There you go.
This is the Senior Tax Work-Off Committee meeting on March 21st, 2022. We're meeting remotely per order of Governor Baker, as allowing us to do so. I see we have a quorum, so that's terrific. Do we have anyone who has the minutes from the last meeting? Because I didn't see a copy. Was there someone who was going to pull that together? Can we have a volunteer for this meeting to do the minutes? Jan, you're off the hook this time. Cindy, I see your hand. Joe, I saw Cindy first. Cindy, thank you so much for agreeing to do the minutes for this meeting. The committee is getting together to discuss the items that we had continued to work on from the past meeting. And we have special guests with us from the assessor's office and from our city auditor's office. So that's great. Thank you all for being with us. There were some issues that we thought would be particularly relevant for the assessor's office and the auditor's office. And I'd like to try to address those technical issues as soon as possible if there is no objection from the group. Joe?
I guess just a real quick question. Have we had public speak yet, or?
That's the next thing we're going to do before we get. Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. Thank you for mentioning that. We had a member of the public, and I don't see anyone there now. So we'll open this up to public speak. And we've covered that base, it looks like. Jen, you had particularly thought that there would be some coordination issues. So would you like to guide us through that? Those technical issues now, so we can be sure we cover them before we end the meeting.
Yeah. So Hadel and I have been discussing the timing of this program because the way, and I had mentioned this at the last meeting, but for Christine and Randy, the way that the program is working this year, we have it so that participants need to finish their hours by, I think it's April 1st, maybe April 30th. I can't remember which, but somewhere in April. And the problem with that is that our tax bills have already gone out. So what's going to have to happen this year is once everyone is done with their hours, we'll make sure, to tally them up. And if anybody didn't do the whole 111, we'll prorate it. And then a list will be given to the assessor's office so that they can do them as, essentially they're going to end up being refunds this year because the bills will have already been paid. And that's not really ideal. It's not what we really want it to be. Excuse me for 1 minute. Sorry. The joys of 10-year-olds. So Hadel and I had discussed that the ideal situation is not for assessors to have to issue, or collectors or anyone to have to issue checks. The ideal situation is for the credit to be applied to the bill before the bill goes out so that the member sees what it was, their credit, and then what they now owe. So Hadel, we had spoken a little bit about how the timing could work better. And I'd like to defer to her on that because she, we did talk it through, but I think she's got a better handle on it than I do as to how the timing should work.
Great. Hadel?
Yes. So there are three pieces to this. First is the payroll, and we have to issue W-2s at the end of the calendar year. The second is the collector side, or I would say the assessor side, where they have to, as Jen mentioned, that they have to either issue a credit or it will go onto the next fiscal year bill, which is not, I think that's not the normal. I'll defer this one to Randy and Christine on this, that's not okay to put, let's say we are into 2022, we are giving credit in May, it will go on to 2023 bill, and that's not okay. It has to be on to fiscal year 2022. So in order to meet these two deadlines, and of course it has to be on the same year for audit side. So those are the three things. So when we try to put all these together, the program should run from January 1st to October. And whatever that fiscal year falls into, before December, treasurer will process the payroll and W-2s before the calendar year ends. Assessor's office would put it out from the bill, either in the one which is for the first quarter of the new calendar year, or no, it would be third quarter of the fiscal year, and I will put it on the books for that same fiscal year somewhere in January to March. So that streamlines. Oh, JP, did we lose JP? Should I still continue?
He's the host, isn't he?
Yes, he's the host. Should I still continue or wait? Continue? Okay.
Yeah, I'm taking the notes.
Yeah, so I think and I also reached out, I gathered all this information by reaching out to our external auditors and City of Northampton, who runs this program too, which I learned from either Jen or somebody. So that's what would be an ideal thing to solve all three departments' timing issue, if that makes sense.
And, oh, sorry, Randy, hang on one second. I just wanted to say, and actually this I probably should wait for JP, but like the way we did it this year was July, August were kind of like that's when we were gathering the applications. That's when we were, filtering through them, figuring out who to put where, that sort of thing. And then people actually started working in September. So if you count September to April, we're talking about like 8 months. So if we go with the same time frame in terms of amount of time, January, we could open up applications January, review them February, get everybody set in their positions for March, have them do their hours from March until October, and then, continue on with the process as Hadel was saying.
JP was power, that's why.
What was that?
The power went out and JP house, but the power came back. He's gonna try to join us, but I don't know how because he was a host. Let me see how I can do that.
Back host.
No, I don't have the options to be a host.
He didn't delegate co-host?
Oh, Cindy might have the answer.
Homar, so you are a host. I can see in the participant list, you're the host and you're still recording it.
Yes, but I lose the powers to make everybody. Let me see if I can make someone else host. Oh yes, I got it back. You're right.
It falls back.
Let's wait for him.
Yeah.
I mean, we can keep talking, but I think he's going to try to join us as soon as possible. Okay.
So
sorry to interrupt.
No, that's okay. So with respect to what Jen just said about the programming time, we start in January application process and February and all that. What we can also do, and we have to look into whether we can do it or not, is as soon as the October cycle closes, November, December, we accept the application. So it gives full 10 months to all the applicants to perform their job and get the benefit of this program. So basically you start scrutinizing and asking people to apply for position in November and December, and they will be hired effective January 1st.
So yeah, that makes sense. In the towns that I've worked in before, you want to have the, or the compensation is usually realized the same way it is as an exemption. You know, either veterans or seniors. So it's something where hopefully we're notified before we're going to start sending out the actual bills, the third and fourth quarter bill. And that's where it would be realized as a discount for the third and fourth quarter bill, half of it in the third quarter, half of it in the fourth quarter. So Hadel, what you're just describing would be perfect. If we could start taking those applications in November for participants and then give them from January until October to fulfill the hours. That is a generous time frame, and the amount that we're using, the 1,500, is more than I have dealt with in other towns, and that's a lot of hours for one person. But you know, so they'll need more time, I guess, is what I'm getting at. Whereas in other towns, it was more like a 6 or 7 month time frame that they had to complete the hours. So I like the idea of let's start it with a calendar year where they can go ahead and they've got more time to get that done. Definitely to have it so that we're able to get the tallies from the final, whoever it is, the person that is coordinating the hours from the seniors, they'll prorate, as Jen said, for the amount of hours actually worked if they didn't complete the entire thing. And then we would put that in and enter it in through our database. I think would be able to add it into, you know, the tables is another thing. Then we'll manually put in the amount that we are notified. And that way, when we do the export from our system, it will get imported and the system will understand, and the funds will get taken off of the third and fourth quarter. As I said, usually if it was 1,000 that we were taking off, would be 500 off the third quarter and 500 off the fourth quarter.
So just a little bit of accounting for recording purposes is there are 4 different ways to do accounting for senior work tax off. I am choosing, after discussing with our external auditors in the city of Northampton, to go with hitting overlay account with the actuals, and anything which is federal or, well, federal comes out of everybody's and it's just withholding. The Medicare tax is going to be taken out from our real estate revenue because it is not. The reason why I'm not touching the overlay for those expenses is because overlay is for real estate only. It has nothing to do with other kind of expenses. So hitting the income which we generate, it's not going to be a big dollar amount, but that is something which is the way when assessor's office is going to do their paperwork, it's going to completely hit the overlay. It's not going to be like total amount plus Medicare plus federal is going to hit overlay.
And that's a great point. The overlay is going to have to absorb this too. So when we're doing our budget planning, we need to work those funds. And I think you probably are already aware and did that last year, but you work those in so that it's something that you're anticipating and you're building up your overlay, knowing that that's going to come out of it.
Are we anticipating about 20 applicants for, or possible 20 people to take the advantage of the services?
If I may, sorry, I apologize. I lost power at the house, so that killed the internet. Everything's down. I could see you all, but you all froze. And then, so I'm so glad you continued. I was able to pick up some of this by telephone. And I think the key point was that you're looking at from January to October.
Yes.
For the work period, so that funds could be paid by the end of the calendar year and W-2s could go out for the calendar year. I think that was basically what you all worked out. If you were saying, Hadel, once again with your question, please.
So continue to your stuff. So you got 2 points. The third point is that real estate bills will have the impact of this benefit in third and fourth quarter. That was the third point.
That the bills will go out with the benefit.
With the deduction, yes.
Yeah, so that was the third point. Excellent.
And
Cindy, you were talking of, you had your hand raised, and I think Hadel had asked about the number of potential positions, and I think we were going to try to have that on the table. But Cindy?
Okay, so before Joe addresses that, because I know he wants to address that, there's a point in between, which is the last time we met, and Hadel, you weren't at the last meeting, but maybe Jen talked to you about this. So so this year, people worked from September through March. We had some workers who were done in early February because some workers had so many shifts, they could get it done very quickly. So my question is, before we decide or you decide how many people, how many positions, is it possible if it's a 10-month period, if we can actually fit the 100+ hours into 5 months as we did this year? Could there be, like we talked about last time, 2 people who have 1 position and 1 person say works 5 months and the second person comes into the same position and works the second 5 months of that? It means that you don't have to develop as many positions or have as many people supervising, and as much you can, for some positions, double how many people can be in that position, but that might not be appropriate for another position where you really don't have enough work for that person to do, or you can't make enough work for them to do or supervise them enough. So you need them to do fewer hours per week and per month. Does that make sense to people? It's a question, I'm not assuming that we can do this.
So if I understood it correctly, just let me try to take a crack at summarizing that. I think you said, can we have 2 positions, one which would start sometime after July 1st, but end before the end of the fiscal year, and end by October? I think that's what you were thinking, is so sometime between July 1st and October, and then still get that recorded for them in the tax bill, and then have someone else start in January and work for the rest of the fiscal year. Or work any.
So what Hadel was saying is the positions would run from January through, wait, let me go back to make sure I got it right in the minutes. From January through October.
Right.
So right. So like January through May and June through October, or wherever that split is between the 5 months and 5 months. Or would you only want, yeah, that's the question.
I think the question is, can somebody work at the beginning of this coming fiscal year, as opposed to everybody waiting until January to work?
Oh, that I'm not asking. I'm not asking that, because it sounds like what you're saying is that people wouldn't be able to apply until November or the end of October. And we can't we don't have people to start now, obviously.
I think one of the difficulties in that scenario would be that the work that would be done outside on the rail trails or on the in the parks wouldn't be able to be done, and I think we definitely have that need. The school crossing guards, if that position type of work would come again, they'd be needed come September or October of this year, not necessarily waiting until January. I think. Jen, do you want to comment on that?
So I understand exactly what Cindy's saying, because we've actually had conversations about this. And there were a few of the volunteers, specifically in COA, and then I want to say there was one in Parks, but don't quote me on that, who got through their hours quickly. And in speaking with John Mason, his was intentional because it was a situation where the weather had to be cooperative. So that's how it came into play. But like with Cindy, she, once her volunteer hit their max hours, she just lost the help. And so what she's saying is, would it be possible to have that particular position as two positions, but one that goes from January to say June, and then the other one that starts in June, or we'll say January to May, and then May to October, so that two people can get the $1,500 and she still gets help throughout that whole length of time, not just until the person reaches the 111 and then they gotta go. You know what I mean? The only issue or problem, and this kind of came to me as you were talking about this, Cindy, is it's going to be, I think it's going to be one of those things that like the COA board may have to take on a per position basis. And I say that because there's no guarantee that whomever you get in the position is going to be able to do 111 hours in 5 months. The people that you had in there did, and that's fantastic. But for instance, I know there was a volunteer, I believe it was in personnel, who didn't finish her hours and had, it was a little too much for her. And that's understandable as well. So the problem I think we're going to run into is who knows if the particular volunteer will be able to do those hours. And if they will, that's great. But what if it doesn't happen again next year? So I think that's kind of something that going forward, the Council on Aging board and, Cindy, you guys can kind of determine the best way to handle that, I guess. If you have someone in the position who gets through the hours and wants their, I don't know, their neighbor to work the other half, I just don't know. It's not going to be as cut and dry as we're going to have two positions and they're going to do 111 and 111. That's kind of just what I'm trying to say.
Randy.
Yeah, I had a concern or just something that is occurring to me that I know has to do with the billing system. So if we're putting into the billing system this credit, basically, just like we would for an exemption, then the billing system looks back when it's creating the preliminary bills at what was paid last year. And if they got that benefit, it's going to anticipate that they'll receive that again. So if we have someone that isn't signing up for 2 consecutive years or consecutively, then that's more work, or really it's kind of on my end that we'll have to monitor things and make sure that we're not going to, what the billing system will do is say, what did they pay for the whole year? And if it's minus 1,500 of what they would regularly pay, it breaks it down so that that credit is anticipated and it's a quarterly amount with that 1,500 in there. So if somebody is not participating the following year, I need to know so that when we're creating the billing, I can make an adjustment to their account so that they're getting a true quarterly bill or something that is close to a true quarterly bill as we can anticipate, without knowing the tax rate and what the values are going to end up being. But, I wouldn't want someone to get a very low bill in the first and second quarter. There's a preliminary bill and then get socked in the third and fourth because they didn't participate. And then we, weren't on top of our game. So that's just something I wanted to bring up while I was thinking about it, and really something that I'm going to have to do. And even currently with the KVS system that we have right now, the assessor kind of doesn't have a spot in there between the database and the collector. So I was hoping that was going to clear up, but this is a good example of where sometimes the assessor needs to do some manipulation to individual bills to try and smooth things out and make it a better billing situation.
I can see that this may very well become an issue that you'd want to have a heads up about. And I'm not sure what the best way. I think you're getting the list of people who are participating and that list go out regularly. Is someone coordinating that list? I imagine it would be the Council on Aging office that could then take the responsibility to say, these are the folks who we have this year. This is where they're working. This is what we anticipate, and send that to the assessor's office and to the treasurer's office and to the auditor's office. Would there be anyone else that would need to get that information? Hadel, I see your hand.
Yeah. So hold on. Okay. So the way it's going to work out is, at this point, Jennifer is keeping track of all the hours by individual people's name. What we need to coordinate with assessor's office is get the addresses for those people and verify in their system. So comes October, Jen would have everything in place as a tracking sheet. November, she would process payroll. Then she would have the actual number, which needs to go onto overlay and what needs to be charged to Medicare. So the overlay amount will be then sent to the assessor's office with the list of people's name and their address. And that's when they're going to go through the abatement process with their board of assessors. And once the paperwork comes back to me, which normally I get it from Christine, that paperwork will give me permission to make the changes in the system. While this whole process is going on between going from treasurer to assessor's office to back to me and collector's office, Jen will be doing W-2s to close the fiscal year and make sure that all the credits were given to them. Does that make sense? We don't, the assessing department would go into the system and put the credit onto the system on the basis of the list given. It's not going to be that every year you do a default setting in KVS by individual people for good. It can't go that way, because one person can be working this year but not next year. So assessing office has to go through the list which was provided by whoever is keeping track of those hours. Does that make sense? Okay.
It does to me. I had my hand up. And
Okay.
yeah, actually, I was just thinking out loud because it was occurring to me that was, there's a potential for that situation to happen. So really, as part of my process, what I would build in, and I do with this with exemptions also, is just I would create a master list from the list that I'm given. Here's all the participants from last year. And then I would be able to compare it, because before I'm making that billing in June, which is for the first, the start of the fiscal year, I would have the opportunity to see who's participating this year. And I would already know from the previous year. I could compare the two, and then that will give me the heads up that, oh, hey, I've got this person who's not participating. And so then I'll know to make an adjustment so that nothing happens. So it's really, I'm saying this to the committee, but it's really, I'm more thinking out loud. It's my process that I will have to build in to make sure that I'm handling this the way I want it to be handled, I guess.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Randy, if you're completed your thought, Jen?
I kind of just Randy kind of said what I was going to say, which was, I mean, as soon as the positions are filled in, let's say, January, we can give him a list of those people. We won't know what hours they're going to actually work, but he could at least have a list, and he could go through and be like, okay, these 5 people were on it last year, so I'm not going to worry about them, because it's okay if the system projects, a savings, because they will have some sort of savings. But then for the new people, he'll at least know who the people are that weren't involved last year, or who isn't involved this year that was last year. So, there could be multiple lists, I guess, is what I'm saying, one at the beginning, just so that you have the names. And then, one at the end where you have the actual credit amount.
Now, it is also possible, while we're thinking about names, to give the names on a. I mean, it's not. I'm wondering if everybody doesn't come aboard at the same time, and there's a slot or two open, and somebody comes in later. How do we catch up? I would imagine you just send an email update of the list with starring or highlighting those people who are new to the list. Does that sound like what could happen? I'm going to go right to Cindy.
What I'm envisioning is that we have a master list, in a Google senior tax work-off folder, so that we don't have a whole bunch of, so that we have like a central place. So every time somebody gets approved, they go into that spreadsheet. It's shared with all the appropriate people. Maybe we have a couple of spreadsheets, like these are the candidates, and then another spreadsheet, these are the approved receivers of the senior tax work-off, and it's got all their contact information. And then even I can ask the treasurer for a report out on their final hours and pop those hours in there, just so that anybody who ever has a question, they can go look at that folder, but also they could look and see, did I do my job or not do my job? And Cindy, this whole column's empty, what's going on? Just like, I think we need to have some checks and balances or just backups, because it's new and we won't all be in the habit until we have a system and we've gone through a whole cycle. It's just my suggestion.
I don't see any confused faces or anyone that appears to be in disagreement. I think we've resolved some very important technical issues. Anything else on that side?
I have a question.
Sure.
Because Randy was talking about adjusting the bills if the person doesn't participate the next year. But we've had people who get like senior exemptions and things like that, and then their house sells. So obviously they're not getting it the following year, but we don't adjust those bills. So that's my question to Randy.
Because it's a new owner. So the new
Right,
owner.
but if they're gonna get a bill with the first and second quarter discounted from the year before.
That is a good point.
Right, and we never touch those.
But it's probably something that we should do, because that's, we'd have to look and see if we could verify that. But yeah, we've even had a couple this year that sold, soon after July, or what was it, in August or something like that. And it was the same type of thing where they had gotten it. But yeah, that's a good point, and something else that we should look at and make an adjustment, because, I would not be a fan of getting a bill for $500 for the first and second quarter and then getting one for $3,000 for the third and fourth. So yeah, that's a great point. And while we're talking about that, yeah, that's something that we should probably have on our radar, and something else we want to be aware of to make sure that we're on top of our game.
We probably have to look into it, because I've never heard of doing that before. So I think we'll have to look at and see if other cities and towns do that.
Yeah, they may or may not do it, but if we want to try and have that as a policy for Easthampton, it's something that we should do.
Yeah, we'll just have to check with the laws.
No.
Okay, there were just two points. Let me make sure I understand correctly how the year is going to run. It's going to start on or about January 1st and run to the beginning of October or the end of October?
End of October.
The end of, so Halloween, then October 31st.
Yeah.
Okay. And let me just talk a little bit about the whole matter of people repeating from year to year. And when we went out, oh gosh, JP, it was a year or so ago, or maybe even before that, when we went out to a lot of other department or other cities in Massachusetts that have programs like this, it seemed to be more the exception than the rule, that people would continue from year to year. And I think it's, in some cases, it's an issue of fairness. You don't want to keep bringing in the same people, unlike in an employment situation where you want to keep hiring the same people every season. Here, I think there's people are going to be looking to see if the positions are being distributed, pretty evenly or fairly, and that some people aren't getting this, the same job every year. So that's something that I know is the people who are going to be managing it, that we're going to be looking at somewhat, which isn't to say that it won't happen, but I think it's going to be perhaps more the exception than the rule.
I agree with you that our goal had been to assure that there is an evenness and an open fairness to the program. And the thought was that there may be more demand for positions, or with people with the demand than positions available. So we were, and I think we want to continue that. We'll put that to a decision by this committee, and then make the recommendations to the council and to the mayor. But that would be my preference. Omar?
Thank you, JP. I don't want to be the bad guy, right? But I'm a bit confused with a few things about the process. First, I think that the conversation about the financial stuff is not part of this committee. That should be only the financial team and probably the CEO, the Council on Agent director, to go to 50 pages and I have a meeting and talk about that. Second, I think that the meanings of this committee was to create a program that we already create, and that the Council on Aging should be having those conversations with Cindy and with the financial team at the mayor. And I will recommend this committee to create a report in conjunction with the COA and represent it to the council. But at the end, I think the purpose of this committee is already done. That's my opinion. And I think the process of the next, if we're going to add more people, or how they're going to be led, or where they're going to work. And I think that is the COA and the mayor's decision. I think this committee don't have that power to do that. That's my 2 cents in this conversation.
But I appreciate those comments. And I certainly do agree that the coordination of this, because we had various people in the positions, and in fact, we're going to have another loss of a very key personnel in another week. I'm very sorry to see. Then to make clear that the treasurer won't be with us after the end of the month. So Jen, we'll miss you on that. But I think our goal was to make sure that coordination occurred, and any issues that occurred, if they became programmatic, we could then be the ones to be involved with, like, when does the program start? And what I'm hearing, I do have some concerns about, will the program start not until January? And that would mean we would not have a senior tax work-off in operation come July or September. Is that what I'm hearing here? Or is it possible to have some workers work in the parks this summer? Jen?
I think that the only difference for this year is going to be, because we're in March. Last year we had everyone fill out applications, and I think they were due back in August, maybe something along those lines. So I think we'll just have to make a bigger push this year, so that, I figure if we're in March now, let's say applications go out April or are available in April, require that they be back at the end of May, June, July, August, September, October. I mean, that's 5 months. Maybe we, I don't know. I know exactly what you're saying. Like, I'd hate to skip it this year, but maybe the alternative is, to, I don't know, make it known that this year, the time frame will be shortened because of the fact that we're adjusting the time of the program altogether. So that people will know that they'll only have 5 months to do 111 hours. I know for some people that's not going to be an issue because, like I said, there's a few people I had people before December who were done with their hours and they hadn't started until September. So I think what it's going to have to be is an adjustment year. I don't know. I would defer to Cindy and the COA as to what they think the easiest process would be, because we do still have people that are finishing out their hours for this year, and that's going to go until April.
That makes sense.
So I don't know, that overlap would be a good thing, or, if the people, if the department heads who had access to these volunteers felt that it made sense to have it still, but just for a shortened period versus not have it at all, then I'd say go ahead. But I don't think that's for us to determine,
Right. Hadel, did you have a comment?
Yeah, it's more a question. Is it possible to have, is my sound echoing to me? No, okay.
Cindy has to mute.
I did it for her.
Okay. Is it possible to prorate? So first question is, do we have a tracking from January 1st of 2022 till now who worked for this calendar year? If so, can we make it as a prorate for them to get the credit for 2023 bill instead of making it workable for this year's bill, and make this year as an adjustment year? It's a question. I do not know if it's practically possible. Do you see what I'm saying? It's like, you now an application goes out, like, it opens, as Jen is saying, like April, May, but this is the adjustment year. So the people who are already working, they're already in place, and now we're just waiting for other people to join. And this is the key time because summertime is coming, and they might have more opportunities at the park or outside work where they can maximize the hours in a heartbeat. Can we announce this as a adjustment year effective whenever City Council approves it? Yes? No?
I would like to.
Sorry, go ahead.
I'm just saying, I think that makes sense. I would like to see it. I think that's a technical issue that could go back to the COA and get resolved by the internal group. Cindy, are you in agreement with that?
I don't have enough information to be able, I think, to understand that. Like, for example, does our COA advisory board actually have the knowledge they would need to make that determination? I know I don't. Well, but it's two separate issues. Just speaking solely on the issue of what would the people who are the senior tax work-off people currently think about their credit being delayed to FY23 when they were expecting it in FY22? I can't answer that. Well, I don't exactly understand. I think I'm getting it. I just need to see it over the course of a whole year, how the calendar year and the fiscal year come together around this program and the bills. And then another question as I'm listening to you is, it sounds like councils on aging, perhaps working with the mayor, make a lot of these decisions. I can see the programmatic pieces. That seems easier to me than the technical and fiscal financial issues. So I would just need to learn what issues are in my, say, if I'm shepherding this purview to facilitate decision-making around programmatically. Obviously, if you said, we want you to start some new people by such and such a date, like April, and bring them on board so they can finish their hours by October. and that's a new batch of people, fine, we will make that happen. We will make that a priority, like whatever it takes to make this program functional so that the residents can benefit from it as soon as possible and the departments can benefit from the hours, we will make that a priority and we will do it because we benefit tremendously from it. And we've seen it in action. If what you're saying is we don't have to do that whole application process until next fall, but right now what we're going to do is transmute those people who are in there now into FY23 people, and everybody understands what that is. Sure, you know, I mean, that's easy if that works technically. It's just that when they're done, then there's that gap from the end of March or whatever until January. We would all just have to adjust to that reality. So I guess, and then Omar, you were saying what is appropriate and isn't appropriate for this committee to discuss as opposed to the Council on Aging Board with staff, meaning me and then the mayor. That I don't understand. So I do need to understand that at some point. Okay, did that make sense? Sorry,
Yeah.
Trying to take minutes and think.
Just to take off on that question just for a moment, I think the workings with the various departments, I think your area is the Council on Aging, the seniors, Cindy has the role of the Council on Aging offices, but integrating the program into the rest of the city, making decisions as to who gets the positions, may have implications beyond. And we were trying initially to take some of that away from the mayor, not away from the mayor, but not to burden the mayor with those kinds of decisions and kind of fill a role there. That may end up being a council on board of the Council on Aging decision-making in the end. During the transition and during the pilot, that's where we saw us helping in this to get it off the ground. So I'm willing to take more input on that. Jen?
So after hearing what Hadel was asking about and then hearing Cindy's take on things, my opinion is that we leave these first year people as we hired them. They have till April to finish their hours. They can do up to 111, which would get them the max of the $1,500 credit. I think then we look at year 2 as a separate animal, and year 2 is the adjustment year. So we do still call it that because it'll be a shorter period of time that people have to get these hours in. I think as long as we are transparent about that in the beginning, and we say, because we have to shift the timing of this from this date to this date, you can work up to 111 hours. And if you do the 111, you get the $1,500 credit, because people would know coming in that that's what it would take to do that. And like I said, I mean, we had people who did 111 in 3 months and it was nothing to them. They wanted more. So I think that as long as we're transparent about it, I think that's the way to do the adjustment, because it doesn't take anything away from the pilot year, first year people. They still get the credit. It'll have to be as a refund, but they still get what they signed up for. And they finish their hours within the time frame that we originally gave them. And then the second year people, you know, we start that off as soon as possible and, you know, go through applications, try to expedite that process, you know, as much as possible, just for the sake of giving them as much time as we can to do those hours. But then, you know, like I said, just transparency, this is our adjustment year. And maybe, you know, if we get any pushback from that, from people like, oh, well, I should have longer or whatever, maybe because this is an adjustment year, we give them first dibs at applications for next year only because we shortened their time or something. And I'm just throwing that out as a, you know, in case people are being squeaky wheels. But, you know, I just think that I I think that Hadel's got a good idea in terms of like having those hours for 2022 count towards the next year, but I think that it would drum up a lot of trouble for people who, you know, did more hours in 2021 than what they've done in 22, and I think it would just be messy. So I think it would be cleaner to keep it as we intended it for this year, and then start year 2. So there'll be overlap, is what I'm saying. You know, we'll start year 2 while people are still finishing their year 1 hours, and you know, if we can extend the positions that they're in because we don't get a lot of applicants, then great, they can have a credit for next year too. But you know, like to what Joe was saying, we want to give everybody an opportunity. So I would say, you know, try to just be transparent about the time frame for this year, and make it known that it's an adjustment year, because the timing going forward will be January to October.
If there's anything else that could the financial team and Cindy take care of these issues that we have before us? Is there something else that you think that maybe this committee could better help with at this point, or do you think you can handle those by another meeting if necessary? And we can still make a presentation about when the program starts, so we could make that announcement when we make our report, I hope by the end of April. Is that something that could be taken care of? Omar?
Thank you. Cindy, thank you for all those questions. I think they're amazing. Let me see if I can answer a few of them, right? Let me start with the history of this committee. This committee was created at the last term by the past city council president. It's an ad hoc committee. The ad hoc committees are created by the council president. I didn't create this committee. So in my conversation with the past council president, sound like the reason of the creation of this committee is already done. I still believe that we should keep it just to have the report. This committee in the past that I wasn't part of it, accept the MGL to have this program and set the rules and the parameters for this program. Then now the COA is in charge of it as a part of the program that COA bring to the seniors. I think that's answer part of your question. And that's why I do believe that the conversation about the financials topic should be private or could be public, but should be only to the financial team with the COA, and finish those questions that probably the assessors have or Hayden have, or resolve it as soon as possible, right? Because as soon as we resolve those issues, I think it will be easier for the seniors, and that will be easy to understand for everybody. But I don't think is the purpose of this group to discuss that. That's what I'm trying to say, right? I don't say that this conversation is boring. I really love it. I think this is really instructive to me, but I don't think this is the committee to have that conversation. That's my point.
I would agree with that. Cindy?
So what just happened is that we accidentally mushed a city council committee and a staff meeting. Basically, they got smushed. So, okay.
Adel?
I think I should wait for my question then. I just wanted to know if we can prorate the hours the way Jen was talking about, that, you know, we carry the people who are still continuing because we already processed on the payroll, so give them the partial credit, then keep the second round people in this year and prorate those hours. So basically give them credit for the work they have worked till December 31st. Starting January, so starts the new fiscal year. So let's say from January till now, they have worked 30 hours and they have 110 hours. So now they have 90 hours to work for this calendar year. Is that a possibility or no? Sorry.
And
So is it technically possible? Yes. However, I kind of go back to what I said originally, because that wasn't the initial plan. And I just think that I think some people would be fine with it. And they would be like, oh, okay, well, as long as you give me the credit for the 60 hours I worked, into December, throw that on my refund or exemption or whatever for this year. And then we'll count these 30 hours towards next year. But we're automatically extending their positions and we're not giving someone else a chance to fill that position. So that we're kind of contradicting ourselves in saying we want this to be an opportunity for anyone who, is eligible. So, I mean, mathematically, yes, it can be done, but, is the best way to handle it? Maybe not.
Okay.
That's just my opinion.
Yeah. So how many positions we're talking about when we talk about this?
Right now, 10?
10?
8, 10?
They're still on board, say all of them? Oh, okay.
I think one is not.
9.
we were authorized to 10 and $15,000.
What's
And-
the authorization for this year, when it comes to the next year? Do we know?
That's our next agenda item, is to decide, make some recommendations regarding that. And I think
Okay.
the recommendation was for 20 people. And so, and that would be for $30,000 up to a maximum of. Is that what everyone's sense was? No objection, hearing no objections, I would make a recommendation for that. The other was, do we continue our determination that only that no one repeat in 2 years in a row? Any objections to that? Joe?
I think as a general rule, we'd rather not go down that road, but that's not to say that in certain cases, if one of the department heads has got a job that's got a pretty concrete skill set and nobody applies who can really fill that bill, then I'm not averse to having somebody repeat if they so desire and if the department head wants that to happen.
Cindy?
Question. Is the program aimed at accepting senior tax work-off applicants into the program, and then we find a placement for them, rather than we create work positions that we're trying to fill? Those are two different approaches. One is centering the tax work-off potential worker and making sure you have a place for them, versus having department heads looking for workers, if you understand what I'm saying. So, for example, I could have a position that no one is suited for, but those people who applied may be suited for something else, and it's their turn to get their credit. So we need to find a placement for them, and maybe that position that no one is suited for will just have to be dealt with in another way, not with a senior tax work-off worker. Correct me if I'm wrong. With that, just to finish that up, I think I asked Linda Talbot, I think, about that because she was deeply involved in interviewing people, and it seemed like that was the focus, was placing people, not hiring people.
There were positions, if I recall correctly, that we started with job descriptions from the various departments, and those job descriptions went out to the COA, and then the COA was working with those job descriptions to interview the applicants. So this was job description driven in the first year. Joe?
I was one of the people who went through job descriptions and people's applications and was part of the group that made decisions on who should probably be offered what job. We were very clear in talking to people that even though you may be qualified for the program, no one is guaranteed a job. So that people should not look upon this as I need a job, it's an opportunity to do some work and get some of your taxes reduced. But the way I ran it, there were no guarantees to anyone that they were going to get a job. And if we didn't give them a job, then we violated some sort of contract.
Okay, then I misunderstood. I think where I got confused was that I had heard that there was one person who didn't fit into any of the jobs, and it seemed like a position was created for that person, but I probably have that wrong. You know, maybe that position already existed, and in the end, a match was found for that person, as opposed to the other way around.
I think we're pretty clear on that. I guess that we would also look at the, I wanted to review back, if I may, to Jen had sent along some material from the DOR, which dealt with some of the issues and I think answered some of the need for a legal opinion on a matter. Did you want to address that maybe in a minute or two, or however, if you need longer?
Essentially, it was just that there was some question along the way about the possibility of utilizing senior tax work-off volunteers at quasi-city places such as Easthampton Media, the library, Chamber of Commerce. And we kind of went round and round that, well, even though they're not completely city departments, the city does fund some of these things and blah, 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 blah. But the information that I forwarded from DLS was very clear that the position that we place these people into has to be to the direct benefit of the city. So I took that to very clearly mean it has to be an actual city department that this person is working for.
I read that the same way when I read the material, so I think that kind of answered the question that we had about that it is for city departments in order to serve the public best by being direct with the department. Just to review one other thing that came up quickly, the conflict of interest. I wanted to be sure that when you put together the material for this coming year, whether that be Cindy or Joe, that we included if an applicant is active on a board or committee. I don't think we put this in the past year. If an applicant is active on a board or committee, that applicant can't work for the same department the official role represents, because that would be a conflict of interest to serve on that board or committee and receive a benefit, an income benefit from the city. They might work for another department or another area of the city, but not for that one. So we should be sure to have that in there. I'm looking toward the report, and I know Joe put something together. Is there something else that should be in that report? And Joe, would you be willing to make that presentation to the council? say the second meeting
Now,
in April.
now I'm audible. I mean, that's,
Do we take throw it away or something?
oh gosh. I mean, I was just trying to sort of guess what sort of information people would be interested in terms of like what some of the measures of effectiveness, and I know we talked about the benefit to the volunteers, the financial benefit to accrue at some point, but also the social benefit of people who are able to, you know, get out and interact with people, you know, especially in the COVID situation. And so I did put something together. I changed I took the names out of it so that people's privacy would be protected.
I noticed that, and I did some research on that subject, and Boston actually goes ahead and gives all the names of all the participants for their program. So it is a matter of public record. If you work and are if you have income from the city, your name is a matter of public record. So that's something that can certainly be said. I would hold back on any information for addresses, telephone numbers, that sort of thing, as we would also probably redact that in most cases for city employees. But to have the names of the workers, I think, put a name and I'll say face for a moment to the program, because folks in the city who live and work in the city are getting some of this benefit. I think that's important to have those names.
Okay.
So I don't think there's an expectation of privacy with regard to your name. And that may also be something that we want to put on the applications for the coming year, because I think folks, it's important for them to know that their name will be used and is available.
Okay.
We were going to talk about eligibility requirements, and I think we were centering around the new standards that usually come out in April for the low and moderate income housing qualifications. Income, the only question was, do we want to reserve a small percentage of the program to allow for some flexibility? Let's say, for example, that if we go to 20, that 10% of the program be available for a different income restriction, so that 90% of the program, 18 people, would meet these guidelines. You're the priority target. This is the income guideline for 18 positions. For 2 positions for the city, there would be a cutout to have up to 2 people receive a different standard, whether that standard be something like, I think this year it'll be somewhere in the area of 65,000. What I'm trying to bring out here is an opportunity for those who say get $75,000 or $80,000. They just got hit with medical bills this past year. They have 2 kids in college and are feeling the pinch and could really use an extra $15 an hour. I don't think we're going to have people who are making $300,000 a year be jumping at $15 an hour jobs. But I think to create some flexibility. Now, the question on the table is, and I'll put it in the form of a motion, I guess, that we recommend a program with 20 participants, 18 of whom would have the requirement. Sorry, the phone's ringing. I don't think there's anything I can do about that. Bear with me, please. 18 positions reserved to the low and moderate income housing standard, housing income, and 2 positions available up to, I'm going to say 200% of the low and moderate income housing. At some point, in this case, it'd be something in the area of like $130,000 income for a family. And somebody could still be feeling the pinch by paying 2 college tuition bills and say, hey, I'll take that $15 an hour job. So I'll put that in the form of a motion. Is there a second to the motion? And we can have discussion about it. I don't see, Joe, was that a second or are we holding
No,
back?
I was looking for discussion about it. Because I think if you have a general information document about the program and say, the financial guidelines for such are, the moderate income, and then, but two of you guys can, have a heck of a lot more money and we'll still take you on. I mean, that raises, what if everybody says, I qualify, and I mean, I think that's opening up, a possible can of worms here.
That may very well be. Cindy, do you have any thoughts on the subject?
Okay, two things. First of all, even if it's only 10% of the positions, you could have a lottery to figure out if you have, who gets them. But on the other hand, who decides? So if it's 200%, say, of the low moderate income, I'm just curious what proportion of Easthampton senior, how many Easthampton seniors are there that fall into that versus the low moderate income? I just don't know the demographics well enough of Easthampton yet. And just because if more people, if many people fall into the 200% of low moderate income, and if it's skewed, in other words, but I have the feeling that there's plenty of people in the low moderate income. I don't know. I would just want to see what the spread is. If there's so many low moderate income, then within that group, you could easily fill 20 or more positions. That's one thing. Or if you thought it would be really difficult to fill the 20 positions just from that group and you wanted to broaden the group, you needed to broaden the group and have more people apply, it makes sense to have some way of expanding who's eligible. But if there's no problem filling 20 positions with people who are capable of doing those jobs, I personally would reserve these positions for solely for the low moderate, because it will have the greatest impact on those individuals.
I agree hardly. Jen?
I also think that this is probably one of those things that we keep status quo during the pilot years, because didn't we say that it was like three years?
3 years for the pilot program is what we had said.
Right.
And
so in my opinion, 3 years, I think would give us a good indication of the level of interest. So kind of to what Cindy was saying, are we getting 30 applications every year and we only had the most positions we want to do are 20? Or are we getting 10 applications so we can barely fill the positions we have? I think that we need to kind of assess that, and then come the end of the pilot portion, a decision can be made by the COA or, COA and the finance people, whatever. But then it can kind of be determined, okay, we're not getting the level of applications we thought we would. So yes, let's have a certain percentage where if you're, if you make 200% of the eligible amount or whatever, you can qualify. I think that's, to me, I think it's a conversation for a little bit later, only because we really don't have the experience with this program yet to understand the level of interest from the people that the program was initially started for.
I will withdraw the motion. I see that you've spoken very well, and I think that it would make some sense to see if there is further demand. I was anticipating some additional demand and wanting to fill every little pocket with the priority to the 90%. But certainly can see that there may be some extenuating circumstances and issues. I think we've covered the bases. Are we feeling confident, Joe, that you can pull this together? I'm happy to go over any drafts that you have. And I don't know if any of the other members would feel available for review if that became necessary. With no objection, we could move forward. The second meeting is April in April. Omar, are you feeling comfortable with a report in April?
Second
It would
meeting in April?
April 20th?
Yeah, 20th. Yep.
The 20th. That would be good. And that would conclude the committee's report and I think the committee. I hope that folks would remain available if possible for any questions. I know I will. Cindy, should there be further questions? Joe, all the members of the department. Jen, I appreciate all the efforts you've done all this time and give you a loud round of applause. Thank you. Wish you your very best in your future endeavors. And I know this city has really benefited by having you be here to help to guide this program through its initiation. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. It's been a pleasure. It really has.
Any other comments from members of the committee?
Can I say something?
You certainly may. I was just seeing if there was some other business that we needed to conclude. Omar? I
just want to say thanks to Jen. I think you was a great asset in this committee. Without you, I don't know how this committee will do. But you did a great job. Thank you for everybody who served in this committee. And I just want to encourage the COA to invite us, me as a council president and JP, they're really involved with this committee to be in those meetings, right? Those meetings that I encourage you to have a 50 basin with the finance team. Invite us. We want to be part of the conversation too, and we want to add our 2 cents if we can. We want to be part of the process. And please feel free to give us a call, text, or email, and we are more than happy to attend to those meetings.
That's great to hear. We really appreciate having the council president's support. Thank you, President Gomez. I will entertain a motion to adjourn. Should there be no further business?
I'll make the motion.
Second.
We have a motion to adjourn and a second to the voice vote. Jen?
Aye.
JP, aye. Cindy?
Aye.
Joe?
Aye.
Great. Omar? I'm going to you. Thank you so much.
You get at me today.
Thank you for the staff, the additional staff attending tonight, who didn't formally serve as part of the committee, but were instrumental to getting this off the ground. And our seniors, I think if anyone watches this, will be appreciative of all the work that you guys do. Thank you so much. Good evening.
Bye.
Bye, Jen.
This government meeting is brought to you by Eastworks and our local cable subscribers.